Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am entirely convinced that today's guest loves entrepreneurship just as much as I do, and most importantly, also loves seeing other entrepreneurs succeed, and especially when it comes to getting ideas from our heads onto paper, and most importantly, into execution mode. So let me introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Claire Pickens. Claire brings 30 years of business experience to her business plan writing services. As an entrepreneur herself, Claire built a business from the ground up, managing everything from design and construction through to a successful sale. She then went on to specialize in opening new business locations across the country and operationally leading their teams. Having walked in the shoes of entrepreneurs trying to get their vision out of their head and onto paper, Claire is deeply empathetic to this journey. Her passion for entrepreneurship led her to combine her 3 decades of hands-on experience with her higher education to help other business owners achieve their dreams. How does she do that? Well, through her business plan writing services, Claire translates real-world expertise into bank-ready plans that help turn visions into reality. I know that for so many of us, we're going to learn a lot from Claire today, no matter where you are. And this episode especially speaks to you wantrepreneurs out there who are dreaming of starting it, as well as you entrepreneurs who are looking for that growth fuel, that tactical and strategic planning. We're all in for a treat today, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Claire Pickens. All right, Claire, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Hello. It's lovely to be here. Nice to meet you.
Heck yes, likewise, especially because it's rare that I find other people who not only love their business and not only love what they do, but they just love entrepreneurship the same way that I do. And of course, that applies to you. So let's start with your personal background, Claire. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Claire? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Well, I kind of grew up in a very entrepreneurial area. I grew up in Northern California in the wine country, and the area, I can't remember a single corporate-y, franchisey thing being in the area all growing up. So I think from a very young age, I just bled entrepreneurialism and my mom was super involved in the Chamber of Commerce. So I think it's just kind of been a part of my DNA from the beginning. And that it just kind of emerged throughout my life. And even though I didn't really have the education when I was in my young 20s, it became my calling from a very young age. So that first business you talked about, I wrote that plan, designed that floor plan, went to the contractors, built the building, did all those things prior to getting business degrees, which is part of the reason I'm so empathetic to the journey. It can be quite painful to go through all of that, but it's just always been part of my DNA to kind of build something from the ground up and take that dream and imagine it and get very creative and then turn it into something tangible.
Yeah, I love that, especially because it's one of my favorite verbs of all, building. So many of us entrepreneurs, we are builders by nature. That's part of what excites us, is not just the result. Of course, we're working towards a result, but it's that building. And when it comes to building, you can't build without a plan. Claire, kudos to you, because so many people, they want to build, but they are not. It's not so easy to follow a plan and to formulate that plan. Talk to us about the importance of business plans. I increasingly feel like it's a bit of a lost art, especially with the advent of AI and how accessible it is now. Any of us can come up with a plan in 30 seconds thanks to ChatGPT, but when we get to the crux of it, why are business plans so important?
Well, I think you just nailed it. I think we all need to recognize the bank reads and digests tens of thousands of plans every year. I mean, the banks are vitally aware of what ChatGPT can do. They understand all of the mechanics better than any small business person out there. The bank, the SBA, they read them and digest them all day long. So I think it would be a fallacy to think that producing something in that way is going to get past that set of eyes, and they're not going to know. So they know that. What they really want to know is who you are. They want to know your story. They want the genuine touch. So I think that when I connect with my clients, about their businesses, it's not just the technicalities of the business and infusing all of the proper business terminology and helping people really understand that about their business. It's their story. It has to be their words, their story, their passion, and kind of like extracting that from the why behind wanting to do this, because there's some newer parts of the process. There's interviews in underwriting, and they're going to want to hear you verbalize it. So if you take the risk of using AI to write it, you might not do so well in that interview when they ask you to verbalize your story and verbalize the terminology that's in that plan. So I think, when you work with somebody who understands that and can really extract that and be that kind of impartial third party to say, well, I've been there, I understand, and let me kind of help you translate that art into something that you can, it's like your book, it's like your little business playbook, and carry that forward. So I would agree with you. There is an art to this process. It's not all business writing. It's kind of creative writing meets business writing.
And I think that's going to surprise a lot of people, because I think that when we think of traditional business plans, we do think of either the academic approach that so many of us did in business school, or just kind of the bureaucratic. Oh, my bank needs this. I need to do this. I'm applying for an SBA loan. This is a required document. We think about it as just paperwork. Claire, you clearly view it as a living, breathing, strategic document that actually serves a purpose. So let's zoom way out, because I think that that's a different view of it. To you, what is a business plan? What goes into it? What's that structure look like inside of it?
Well, I think part of the reason I believe this is that when I wrote my own first business plan, first of all, it read more like a novel. And thankfully, my mom was an executive in the banking world, and she helped me pare it down, because it really did read like a novel. And it was like Once Upon a Time. And so it was super duper long, and I had to pare it way down and just get it down to the parts that should read like that, and then the business parts. But I think your passion should live within the document, because when you go into business, if you don't bring that passion into your business, the likelihood of your business being successful is pretty low. So if you allow an AI character to build your plan, that AI character is not going to be there every day to run your business. It is your passion that's going to run your business. So that is why I pretty wholeheartedly believe that the process, the questions that I ask at the beginning of the business planning process are all about the foundational root cultural core value reasons and the passion behind the why, because that's what's going to operate your business. Everything else about operating a business can be learned. That you can't learn that part, though. When times get tough, when recessions hit and natural disasters hit, it's going to be your passion that draws you through those moments. That's the most important part of your business plan, and you should be able to pull that thing back out again and read it and go, that's why I did this. And that should be in your plan. And I think that that's a skipped element. And if you over formalize it and you skip that part, then it doesn't really serve the purpose that it should serve. And then, and by the way, you should rewrite this like every 3 to 5 years, because your why changes throughout the process.
It's so interesting hearing you say that, because really I'm a visual person. And so what I'm hearing in the way that you're talking about this business plan is it's less so much about the turn by turn directions, and it's mostly about that destination. And of course, the vehicles through which will get us there. And I think that that's different. Too many people think that a plan means, okay, I'm going to do this in month 1. I'm going to do this in month 3. I'm going to shout out a lot of business professors who lead us to believe that that's the way it should be. Whereas what I'm hearing from you today is so much more practical, especially considering all the twists and turns. There's that phrase in entrepreneurship of entrepreneurs jump off the cliff and build the parachute on the way down. How do you balance all of these things? Because that is part of the reality of being an entrepreneur. Things change so quickly. A couple years ago, we didn't even know ChatGPT was going to be what it is. Obviously, 2020 threw so many different turns and twists in a lot of business journeys. So how do we account for both those sides of the equation, the planning versus also the spontaneity that comes with it?
Well, I mean, this is a really fun conversation, and I'm about to age myself in this conversation a little bit because my children are in their late 20s. And we have this conversation a lot because this ChatGPT has been around in different versions for a lot longer than we think. My father, who passed away a couple of years ago, talked about how his frat house had a filing cabinet where you could pull out papers that were written across the course of a decade, and you could pull different paragraphs and information from them to build your own paper, and there was nobody to check for the plagiarism. And so that was the earliest version of that. And you could have done that from different business plans that you could have pulled off the internet all the way through the advent of what we have now, which is just a quicker way to do it. So I think cheating the system has existed forever. So we could have done that forever. So I think, like, when people talk about like using this as a tool, it is a tool that I think is most useful for punctuation and structure. But cheating the system has always existed, and the results, come out like that. To kind of address like the professorial approach, that's what professors are for. Like, when you learn how to cook, you have to learn how to measure. You've got to learn how, the names of the sauces, but there's an art. Like in business, there's an art to it. And because I did everything backwards, I think that's why I think like I think. I sold the business, then I went and did my bachelor's and master's in business. And as I was writing the papers and listening to the content, it was interesting for my brain to wrap my head around, like, wow, like all of these technical terms in real life, there's a real art to executing all of these operational strategies. And, in real life, all of these HR concepts play out very differently than they do in the textbook. So I kind of bring that to the business planning process, and I play what if scenarios with people to say, well, what if on paper, but what if in real life this happens? What are you going to do? And we kind of play through some of those things, because I think that's what also the banks want to see. This is a weird environment that we're in. Things are changing rapidly. And I think they want to know that people are not just going to use ChatGPT to try to save their business. They want to know humans will do what humans need to do to save a service business. And that is primarily the client that I have. They're service businesses. So they want to know, what are you going to do to save your service business? And it's not going to be an answer from an AI character that's going to save your business in those moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not only does it make sense, but I really love your mindset and your attitude to your approach behind all of that. And I also just want to comment on your dad's frat. I love that. I've never heard of basically crowdsourcing your papers, but that makes sense. And you're right, completely undetectable a few decades ago. So that is a brilliant case that I've heard. Those are innovators right there, Claire, true entrepreneurs at heart. And so to really take it in that more serious direction, though, you talk about how much things are changing with regards to banks, with regards to capital, with regards to just macroeconomic conditions in general. And I'll transparently share on the air, I love how many of our recent guests are going the SBA route, are going the banking route, and looking because they recognize, hey, cash is growth fuel. And Claire, you work with a lot of different businesses, from veterinarians to brick and mortar businesses of all different types. And cash, there's a reason why we say cash is king, is because it allows us to get off the ground. It allows us to start making things happen. For people who haven't gone that route just yet, though, of going through banks, going through the SBA, paint the picture for us. How does it work? Because clearly they care about these business plans that we're talking about today. So how's the entire ecosystem work together?
Well, first, I want to dispel the myth that they're seeking to decline your plan. It's part of their business model to find people that have successful plans. So when they give you pushback, it should be seen as feedback. I think sometimes people demonize the process, and really, banks can't be successful unless they lend money. That's the collection of interest is what funds the future of the bank. So the closer you get to understanding the feedback, the better the process goes. Probably the biggest mistake I see people make is getting over married to something that the bank sees as too lofty, and not being willing to do a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 approach. If the bank is telling you it probably needs to be phased, there's probably feedback you need to hear, because they have different people that analyze risk, and they just have different data available to them. So basically the process starts with, the foundational of, are you qualified to get money? I mean, there's just foundationally, are you in a good position to be able to put some money down? Can you handle the risk? Can your household handle the risk? And then after that, they're going to want to know what you're up to. Do you have a piece of property that's qualified? And that's usually when I get looped in, is when contractors and people are qualifying properties. Because after that, once you get past I have a qualified property and I think I know how much money I need, once you get closer to the SBA loan application process, that's when this business plan becomes actually a required part of the process for startups. And there is a structure that is required there. And there's also an interview that comes with that. So when you work with somebody who's familiar with that, each section that you go through, and there's like 8 key sections to a well-structured plan, each section that you go through, you're practicing the entire time. So by the time you get through the plan, you're well-versed in your own business. And it's just not the same to kind of spit out a pre-formulated document. And by the way, most of the AI-driven plans that I see are pretty short. They're usually like between 5 and 7 pages, and the projections are like text written. They're not Excel. Professionally written plans are usually a bit longer. They're like, mine are typically between 15 and 25 pages, and then they come with a set of Excel sheets. So it's a pretty distinctly different product that AI is able to produce right now. So I think people need to know that, and that's why I say the banks can really readily spot them, because they're easy to spot.
Yeah, Claire, I appreciate that you called out pushback is often just feedback, and you went straight to the fact that the banks have data. I mean, let's face it, the bank isn't just looking at my one business plan in a silo. They have experience. They have real life data points of what's worked, what's not worked, what's pivoted, all of those things. And I would imagine that as a fellow entrepreneur, that's part of your superpower when you're working alongside these small business owners, is that you also bring your experience. So I'm excited to hear the way you answer this next question, because I'll never forget junior year, I had a project in business school where we had to make a business plan for, it was in the Boston area, a local theater company. And Claire, I was, 20 years old, or however old you are, junior year of college. And to me, all my projections were that this is going to work. Every single show that this theater company was going to put on was going to sell out. That is my optimist. And I'm probably an eternal optimist, truth be told. And so it's hard for me to plan for failure. That seems counterintuitive, but I guess a realist or a pragmatist would say that that's just being realistic. How do you balance those things? Because every single small business owner, when they start their business plan, they plan on it working out. So how do you bring them back a little bit to reality?
Well, I think this is the part where sometimes I get a little side eye at the beginning of the process, because I don't like to talk about the financials first. I like to do storyline, then market analysis, then dive into products and service. And I like to hear, why do you want those products and services? I want to hear about, as a business owner, are you personally doing the work? How much vacation do you want to take? How do you plan to market? How do you like to market this business? Because that is probably the thing AI is best at, is spitting out a perfectly written marketing plan. However, all of those inputs lead to what the financials will look like. And if during this process you told me, my family and I like to take a sabbatical once a year in June for 30 days, that just triggered to me that somewhere in these financials, I need to ramp up the labor in your financials to be able to cover for that. Or maybe you told me you were going to be a hands-on owner-operated business at some point during this. That means that has to be there. I'm also going to connect you to insurance agents and other types of professionals and lawyers throughout the process, so that you can get quotes on certain things. You have an understanding of how much certain things and your utilities in your area. You should ask about those utility fees. Some of us in different parts of this country are seeing rapid increases in utility bills. So like throughout the process, you should be building towards the financials. But I will tell you this, nearly 100% of the time, people want to start with that. And they have very lofty ideas of how successful this should look on paper and how it should work on paper right from the start. So I think what you felt in school is the prevailing common thought. but it actually should work in reverse. You should build the story first and financials last. And the only time I reverse that is if there's like a pending real estate deal that has to be talked about right away. Otherwise, it should be the very last thing you talk about.
It's funny hearing you say that, because it's actually counterintuitive in the fact that most of us think when we're writing a business plan, there's only one thing that the bank wants to see, and that is it's going to make money. So we feel like that's the answer. It's kind of like math. You know, if I know what the answer is going to be, now I just have to go back and show the work. But I know what the eventual destination is going to be. Is that not the case, Claire? Like, do we have some leeway with the banks to bring that pragmatism, I don't know what that word would be, to bring that realism to that approach and saying, hey, year one, maybe we break even? Like, does the answer have to always be extreme profitability?
It should not be extreme profitability. They already have the data on whatever industry that you're in. They already know your failure rate, probably by zip code. They definitely know it by state and by region, and they know it by every industry and profession. They probably know it close to your zip code if you're in a metro area. So they already know the answer to some of the math. They probably already have crunched your population. They probably already know some of the answers to the market share. Your business plan is a bit of a validation that you also know it and that you've done some research and that you're able to speak to it. So I think people need to know that. You're not telling the bank a lot of things they don't know. You're validating that you are on the same page and that you're partnering on the journey, because that is legitimately what it is when you borrow money from a bank. You are partnering on an investment journey together. They are investing in you. You're part of their overall business plan, and now they are part of your business plan. So it is a partnered endeavor, and should be seen as such, because like you can't do it without each other. So that's, actually, it's a required section to have that first year ramp. And reality says you should not come out of the gate making giant wads of money in that first year. That is not a realistic thing to put there. It's called hockey stick projections that, go sharp and up and to the right. So if they see that on paper, that's not very realistic. And that's kind of a signal that you might not have done your research.
Ooh, I love the way you articulated that, Claire. I'm going to go back and re-listen to that section, because especially the way you talk about partnership, it's so important for all of us to accept that, whether we're going the bank route or not. I think that this is such a healthy attitude towards growth, towards being realistic. I think that one of the main reasons why entrepreneurs never get to the point of success is that we are impatient. We do have unrealistic expectations that set us up for failure. So the really grounded way that you approach that, obviously it's rooted in the fact that you're a fellow entrepreneur, you've been through this personally, brings that approach for you. You brought up competitive analysis, and I want to go back to that, because I always say part of the reason why I love interviewing other entrepreneurs and having this conversation public to people all over the world is because success leaves clues. There are things we can learn in every single other person's business, in their journeys, in their mindset. There's things that we can avoid because we can shortcut by mistakes that others have made along the way. What does that competitive analysis look like? How much can we get into their businesses? Like, do we actually talk to them? Do we go through their businesses as customers? How do we get inside what's actually going on in the local market, or not just local?
Yeah, I would say I actually have a little different view on this than some others do as well. So I think when you're looking at competition in an area, everybody is providing that same service to the same customer base. So the first thing to look at, beyond just the math of, is there still enough business left to add a business to that area? That's just the market share math. Is there enough pieces left of the pie? And there's only two answers to that. Answer A is yes, I can generate new business off of the customers that are in the area. Answer B is no, there's not enough business, and I would be stealing customers from some other business in the area because there's not enough to go around. But beyond that, does the business type in general have a good reputation in the area? And that's doing exactly all the things that you just said. You should go to these businesses as a customer as you can. Maybe have your friends and family do a little secret shopping if you can, because the reputational value of that business type in the area matters. that won't necessarily be something that you can dramatically overcome by opening your business. I know there's sometimes a thought that can happen, but how the customer feels about a business type doesn't dramatically change overnight. So if pizza is thought about a particular way in an area, that's how the customer feels about pizza. They may or may not like your special recipe, but their general thoughts about pizza are going to stay generally the same. So I think when I look at market analysis and competitive analysis, you have to look at the big giant picture of how it's seen holistically, and then narrow down to the math of, if I add a new recipe to the area, are there enough customers to support that new recipe, or do I have to steal from the business up the street?
Claire, what I really appreciate about this approach, and especially as someone who creates entrepreneurial content 7 days a week for people, is the fact that too often as entrepreneurs, we look inward for the answers and we convince ourselves we're super special, we're completely differentiated. We convince ourselves of all of these things. But today, not only am I not hearing that message from you, but what I extra appreciate is the fact that you're calling out, we also don't exist in a silo. You exist within a local community, and that local community ultimately is a big factor, maybe the most important factor in what's going to determine if you succeed or not. So this is way bigger than ourselves. I don't want to be discouraging to listeners, because obviously there are ways that we can differentiate ourselves. What are some of those ways? Because I know you also bake those into your plans.
Yeah, I think, more and more and more the consumer wants to know the heart and soul. And that's why I think it's so vitally important when you're planning your business to put your heart and soul into your plan, is when they meet this business, they want to meet the business. And that is the secret sauce. Like, that is the unicorn dust that is going to be sprinkled on the business. So like, even though the marketing section is probably by far and beyond the easiest section to produce using AI, it's probably the section you should pay attention to the closest, because how you present you in the business, how you bring your secret sauce to the business, how you show up in your community, those cute little boutique touches that you bring. I would discourage small business owners from using too much cookie cutter stamped marketing material, because that's your secret sauce. I mean, small business owners, like, that's what people want from you, is to see the cool photos and neat things that you're thinking of that make you special and unique. And not everything's going to work, and that's totally fine. But that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it not the corporate thing and makes it more of the small business entrepreneurial feel. So I think that's kind of the part I probably enjoy the most about working with small business dreamers and thinkers and entrepreneurs, is that sometimes it's hard to break people out of the kind of strict business framework when they start the planning process. But once you find those little special nuggets and things that make that idea unique, that should just be littered all throughout the plan, because that's what makes that business special and unique. And that's what the community will see too.
I'm so glad you shared that with us, Claire. Truth be told, that's the stuff that it personally gets me excited, and I think it gets all of us entrepreneurs excited, is the fact that we do get to inject us into it. When we work in corporate roles, we are fulfilling a role that the company has dictated. As entrepreneurs, we just get to inject our excitement, our passion, our why that you've talked about so much today into all of these things. So it does get me fired up, and I hope it gets listeners fired up. Claire, I will confess to you while we're on the air together that every episode flies by for me. This one in particular flew by especially quickly, because this is the real stuff. That's what I appreciate about the way you approach business plans, is it's not theory, and it's certainly not academic. This is rooted in your real world experience, your acceptance and understanding of the fact that the banks are looking at real world data. It's an incredibly valuable approach. But before we let you go, there's two things I want to say right now. First thing is that, listeners, we're going to drop Claire's links in just a minute, because if this episode was not enough for you, like it hasn't been for me, she has a free monthly roundtable. So we're going to be dropping those links in just a second. And second, Claire, I always love asking this question at the end of every episode, and it is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? We went through so many valuable things in today's conversation, and you have to remember, we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at different stages of their own growth journeys. So with your entrepreneurial hat on, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
Well, the number one question I get is, when should I start writing the plan? Well, the answer to that question is, if you're thinking about it, start. So even if it's just a little tiny baby idea, go grab a journal and write down whatever you can. If it's bullet points, if it's doodles, diagrams, it doesn't matter. Business planning, it should not be thought of as an over-formalized process, especially if you're at the wantrepreneur stage. Just write it down. Like, get those dreams on paper and keywords, whatever you can do, core values, and let it be a fun journey. Like that, more than anything. Let it be fun. Let your imagination run wild.
Yes, I love that advice for our listeners. Claire, I've already teased them a little bit about all the good things you're putting out from your side of the world, your free monthly roundtables. You have so many resources and so many actual entrepreneurial considerations, strategies, tactics, so much incredible stuff on your website. So, Claire, you've got to drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Well, you can go to my website at smallbusiness-dreams.com, and I do have lots of free stuff on there to take advantage of, and you can join my monthly sessions there. You can reach out to me. I love to hear about people's dreams and the businesses they're considering. Totally understand not every idea comes to fruition. That's part of being an entrepreneur, so you have lots of them. Doesn't mean every one of them is going to be bank ready. So, you can reach out to me right from the website there, and I'm happy to hear from you.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're dropping that link down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Claire, I love your domain, smallbusiness-dreams.com. Listeners, you can click right on through. Otherwise, Claire, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.